she agreed to marry him to save her sick brother. On their wedding night, he forced her into bed without a touch of affection. What seemed like mere raw desire was the beginning of something much darker. If you like stories of love and romance, watch until the end. You won't regret it. Subscribe to this channel and leave your comment telling us where you're listening to this beautiful story from. Let's continue. The night Alana Morrison got married had no celebration, only silence and a contract signed with black ink and grey intentions. The registry office in downtown London, with its peeling walls and noisy air conditioning, witnessed the loveless union. No bouquet was tossed, no spontaneous smiles appeared among the guests, who were few, cold, decorative. Just suited figures, businessmen with calculating expressions, and women who analyzed her as if she were newly acquired merchandise. The simple white dress she wore seemed to weigh tons. It wasn't what she had dreamed of as a child. On nights when, lying in bed in her small apartment in the East End suburbs, she imagined a future full of possibilities. Now at 28, with the pen still damp in her hand, she sealed her fate with a heavy but determined heart. There was an atmosphere of a veiled pact in that ceremony, an alliance forged not by love but by necessity. Hers to protect what remained of her life, Lucas, her 19-year-old brother, hospitalized in a private clinic in Belgravia that cost more than she could earn in years as a receptionist. And his Lionel Blackwood, a millionaire accustomed to buying everything he desired, even a wife. "Sign here," the man beside her said emotionlessly, pointing to the dotted line on the document that would legally bind them. There had been no marriage proposal, no courtship. Just a cold proposition made in a coffee shop at Harrods, where he observed her over an espresso cup, explaining the terms as if discussing the purchase of another property. Lionel Blackwood, 39, heir to Blackwood Holdings, an empire built on emotional blackmail, illicit profits and dirty family pacts, was not seeking companionship. He was 6'3" tall, with an athletic build maintained by daily sessions with a personal trainer, and a face that seemed sculpted from marble, defined features, penetrating dark green eyes, and a permanently austere expression. His neatly trimmed black hair and impeccably cut suit completed the image of power he meticulously cultivated. He wanted obedience. He wanted control. He wanted the perfect woman to occupy a symbolic space by his side and fulfill a role he no longer believed in himself, that of keeping alive a lineage haunted by silent curses. "Don't worry about feelings," he had said the night before the wedding, on the terrace of his penthouse apartment on Park Lane. "Here, feelings get in the way. I will use you, and you will allow it." His words still echoed in Alana's mind as the driver of the black Jaguar drove along the embankment towards the Blackwood mansion in Hampstead. Sitting in the back seat, she looked at the city that had always been her home, but which now seemed a distant backdrop. Suddenly, London was no longer the same. Or perhaps it was she who would never be the same. "We've arrived." "Mrs. Blackwood," announced the driver, a middle-aged man with tired eyes, parking in front of an imposing wrought-iron gate. Mrs. Blackwood. The title sounded like a foreign name, something that didn't belong to her. The daughter of a seamstress from Hackney and an accountant who had disappeared 10 years ago without a trace. The same woman who had attended public schools, who had worked in telemarketing to pay for the business administration degree she never finished, who had raised her brother alone since their mother's death. On her wedding night, as the doors of the Blackwood mansion closed behind Alana, the world changed temperature. The immense entrance hall, with its Italian marble floor and curvilinear staircase, seemed to swallow her. She entered a space where time seemed stagnant. Everything there was too dark, too silent, perfectly architected to hide and never reveal. The mansion, built in the 1940s and renovated with ostentatious luxury, maintained an oppressive atmosphere. The portraits on the walls showed generations of Blackwoods, all with the same look of superiority, some with almost imperceptible lines marring their faces. The antique mirrors with their golden frames reflected only part of the face, as if refusing to show the complete truth. The tall windows, covered by heavy dark green velvet curtains, seemed to spy more than they showed. "Rita will show you to your room, and your things have already been organized," Lionel said coldly, handing his jacket to a middle-aged housekeeper who had appeared silently. "Dinner is at 8. Don't be late," My room? Aren't we? Alana let the question die on her lips as she saw the cutting look he gave her. We have separate rooms. You will be called when necessary. Called when necessary. Like an object, a utensil to be used and stored. The contract she had signed was clear in its clauses. She was to be available to him, attend social events when required, and maintain the appearances of a normal marriage. In return, her brother's treatment would be guaranteed, as would a lifelong allowance if the marriage ended after 5 years. If she broke the agreement before that, she would receive nothing, and Lucas would lose his treatment. Alana's room was a spacious suite on the second floor, decorated in shades of beige and gold, with a king-size bed, antique dark wood furniture, and a balcony overlooking the inner gardens. Luxurious but impersonal, like a 5-star hotel room. The master likes everything to be in order, explained Rita, the governess with vigilant eyes, as she opened the closet where Alana's few belongings seemed lost among new clothes, still with tags. He had a new wardrobe bought for you. Your old clothes were donated as per instructions. Alana felt a knot in her throat. Her clothes, her memories, everything she had brought from her previous life had been discarded without her consent. She was being erased, rewritten according to the Blackwood standards. Who chose these clothes? Mr. Lionel approved everything personally. He has good taste, don't you think? Rita spoke with an admiration that bordered on devotion. I've worked for the family for 30 years. I saw Mr. Lionel grow up, a demanding but fair man. Fair wasn't the word Alana would use to describe the man who had practically bought her, but she merely nodded. She needed to learn the rules of this place, to understand who was an ally and who represented a threat. Dinner was served promptly at 8 in the immense hall with a crystal chandelier and gleaming silverware. Lionel was already seated at the head of the table when Alana entered, wearing one of the new dresses, a simple black model she had found in the closet. You have good sense, he commented, observing her as a servant poured red wine into crystal glasses. You chose the most suitable one. I don't know if it was choice or luck, she replied, trying to maintain her dignity. I don't know your taste yet. A faint smile touched the corner of his lips, quickly disappearing. You will learn, just as you will learn everything you need to be a Blackwood. The food was impeccable, mushroom risotto with truffle shavings, prepared by a private chef, but Alana could barely taste it. She ate mechanically, aware of Lionel's evaluating gaze. Tomorrow we will begin your training, he announced between sips of wine. Etiquette lessons, elocution, social behavior. I have important engagements in the coming weeks, and you will accompany me. I thought I would just be a trophy wife, not a frequent companion. Alana couldn't help but respond. Lionel's eyes darkened. You are what I decide you should be, on the terms I determine. Our public appearance as a couple is fundamental to my current business. I need the image of family stability. The silence that followed was broken only by the clinking of cutlery. Alana realized there was more to this story than a simple marriage of convenience. There was urgency in his actions, a rush to establish this conjugal charade that made no sense for such a powerful man. After dinner, Lionel led her to the ground floor office, an imposing room paneled in dark wood, with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and a massive desk. The smell of old books mingled with the aroma of the whiskey he poured for himself. I want to make something clear, he said, observing her over his glass. You can enjoy the material privileges this marriage offers. You can move freely through the mansion, use the pool, the library. Ask the driver to take you wherever you want. But there are limits. He pointed to a side door. That wing of the mansion is restricted, as is the 3rd floor. Your access is limited to this floor and the 2nd where your room is. Understood? The tone admitted no questions, but Alana couldn't help asking why. What's in those places? Lionel took a few steps towards her, stopping so close that she could feel the heat emanating from his body. It was the first time they had been so near since the wedding ceremony. Suddenly, he raised his hand and touched her face, in a gesture that might have seemed affectionate, if not for the cold eyes that studied her like a scientist analyzing a specimen. Excessive curiosity is not an appreciated quality in this house. Obedience is more valued. His fingers slid down Alana's neck, causing involuntary shivers. It wasn't a touch of desire, but of possession, a demonstration of power. "I'm going to use you now," he said without altering his voice, like someone pronouncing a sentence, not physical but emotional. And then he kissed her, a hard, controlled, methodical kiss. His hands held her firmly by the shoulders, then slid down her back, drawing her closer. Alana felt torn between repulsion and an unexpected wave of heat that coursed through her. There was no affection in that contact, only power and possession, but her body responded in a confused way, betraying her principles. He led her upstairs, not to her room but to the master suite, a space dominated by navy blue and silver tones, with an immense bed at its center. The sex that followed was like Lionel, controlled, precise, with no room for spontaneity. He took her as one performs a necessary task, but his gaze at times betrayed something more, a shadow of vulnerability quickly suppressed. When he finished, Lionel simply got up, put on a silk robe, and pointed to the door. "You can return to your room now." That night, wrapped in the Egyptian cotton sheets of her solitary bed, Alana let the tears flow silently. She didn't cry for the loveless sex, but for the feeling that she had sold something more precious than her body, her dignity. But remembering her brother and the medical reports that showed improvement since he began treatment at the exclusive clinic, she wiped away her tears. For Lucas, she would endure anything, even if it meant belonging to a man who saw her as property. The days that followed established a strange routine. In the mornings, Alana received lessons from an image and behavior consultant, learning to carry herself as a lady of London high society. In the afternoons, she studied French and art history with private tutors, preparing for the social events she would attend as Mrs. Blackwood. Evenings varied. She either dined alone, when Lionel had engagements, or in the silent company of her husband, who rarely spoke beyond what was necessary. On some nights, he called her to his room. On others, he simply ignored her existence. It was on a rainy March afternoon, 2 weeks after the wedding, that Alana met Kyle. She was in the library, leafing through a Renaissance art book, when she heard agitated voices coming from the hall. Approaching the door, she saw Lionel arguing with a younger man, approximately 30 years old, medium height, athletic build, and a face with striking features. Unshaven and intense dark brown eyes. "You work for me. You don't question my decisions," Lionel said coldly. "I've worked for the Blackwood family for years. I know security procedures better than anyone," the other replied, with a confidence few showed in front of Lionel. "Reducing the team is an unnecessary risk. Your role is different now. Focus on being a good driver and leave security decisions to whomever I designate." It was then that Lionel noticed Alana's presence. "Come here," he called imperatively. "Meet Kyle Rivers, former head of security, now the house's main driver. He will take you wherever you need to go when I'm not available." The look Kyle gave Alana contained a mixture of curiosity and something more, something indefinable that made her quickly avert her eyes. "Mrs. Blackwood," he greeted her with a slight bow of his head, but without subservience. There was an almost imperceptible ironic tone in the way he pronounced the surname. "The car will be ready in 10 minutes for us to go to the foundation," Lionel said, checking his watch. "Dress appropriately. The press will be present." After Lionel left, there was an uncomfortable moment of silence. Kyle continued to observe her with that penetrating gaze. "Does he always give orders like that?" Kyle asked, surprising her with his audacity. "You've worked here for years. You should know better than I do," Alana replied cautiously. A half smile appeared on his face. "I know how he treats employees. I was curious how he treats his wife." With the same kindness and consideration, apparently, Alana let slip, regretting it immediately. Kyle's smile widened. "Be careful what you say in this house. Walls have ears, and Mr. Blackwood doesn't appreciate criticism." "It wasn't a criticism, just an observation." "In this house, observations can be costly," he commented, and there was something in his voice that sounded like a warning, especially for someone so new to the game. The tension between them was interrupted by Rita's arrival, who cast a suspicious glance at both. "Madam, you need to get ready for the event. And you, Kyle, the car should be being prepared." As she went up to change, Alana reflected on the strange encounter. There was something about Kyle that stood out from the servile atmosphere of the mansion, a kind of contained defiance, of hidden knowledge. He didn't seem to fear Lionel like the other employees, and, even more disturbing, he seemed to know much more about the dynamics of the house than he let on. The event at the Blackwood Medical Research Foundation was Alana's first public appearance as Lionel's wife. The modern building in Canary Wharf housed an institution that funded research into rare diseases, the philanthropic face of the Blackwood empire. Smile. Greet everyone politely. Don't give interviews alone, Lionel instructed as the car, driven by Kyle, approached the entrance crowded with photographers. If they ask about our love story, say it was a quick but intense romance. Avoid details. Romance. The word sounded absurd to describe the commercial transaction that was her marriage. But Alana nodded and, stepping out of the car, assumed the role of a passionate wife with a poise that surprised even herself. During the event, as she circulated on Lionel's arm among doctors and businessmen, Alana noticed something strange. Occasionally, Lionel's hand trembled slightly, an almost imperceptible tremor that he disguised by switching the glass from hand to hand or putting his hand in his pocket. At one point, she saw him discreetly swallow a pill, drinking water afterwards. When their eyes met, he hardened his expression, as if daring her to comment on what she had seen. On the way home, sitting silently in the back seat of the car, Lionel finally spoke. "You did well. Convincing." "Years of watching soap operas," she replied with slight sarcasm. To her surprise, he almost smiled. "Your humble origin doesn't have to be a disadvantage. It can be refreshing in that hypocritical environment. Why do you care so much about the appearance of this marriage? What are you trying to prove?" His face closed off again. "I'm not trying to prove anything. I'm securing what is rightfully mine." Through the rearview mirror, Alana caught Kyle's gaze, attentive to the conversation as he drove. There was something in that look, a silent message she couldn't yet decipher. That night, after Lionel left her alone in her room after another mechanical sex session, Alana couldn't sleep. The mansion seemed to whisper secrets in the shadows. She got up and, defying the explicit rules, decided to explore. The hallway was silent, illuminated only by the faint light from the wall sconces. She descended the stairs carefully, avoiding the steps that might creak. On the ground floor, the mansion looked different in the dim light, objects taking on almost menacing forms. She passed Lionel's office, the dining room, the library. She was about to return when she noticed a door semi-hidden by a heavy tapestry at the end of the corridor, the entrance to the restricted wing. Her heart racing, Alana approached. She tried the doorknob, expecting to find it locked, but to her surprise the door yielded. A dark corridor revealed itself before her. She advanced a few steps, guided by curiosity and a strange feeling that she needed to discover what this house was hiding. The corridor ended in another door, this one locked. Beside it, an antique table held a picture frame turned face down. Alana picked it up, and in the faint light from the corridor saw the photo of a young, beautiful woman with light brown hair and bright eyes, smiling at the camera. There was something strangely familiar about that face, as if she had seen it before. "You shouldn't be here." The deep voice startled her. Turning quickly, she saw Kyle's silhouette standing at the entrance to the corridor. Her heart pounded, not just from the fright but from the fear of being discovered by Lionel. "He's not home," Kyle said, as if reading her thoughts. "He left 20 minutes ago for an emergency meeting." "How did you know I was here?" "I have my ways," he replied, approaching. His eyes went to the picture frame Alana still held. "You've met Helen." "Helen?" Alana repeated the name, looking at the photo again. "Who is she?" An enigmatic smile appeared on Kyle's face. The right question would be, who was she? And why did Lionel Blackwood marry someone so similar to her? Alana felt a shiver run down her spine. She looked at the photo again, and then at her own reflection in the glass of the frame. The resemblance, now that she was looking for it, was disturbing. "What do you know about this?" she asked, her voice almost a whisper. "I know more than I should," Kyle replied. "And if you're smart, you'll want to know too. Because you're not in this house by chance, Alana Morrison. And the game you're playing has rules you can't even imagine yet." In the days that followed that night, Alana couldn't get Helen's image out of her head. The resemblance between them was unsettling, as if she were looking at an altered version of herself. On the few occasions she met Kyle, they exchanged glances laden with unspoken meanings, like accomplices of a secret they didn't yet fully understand. He knew more than he revealed, but seemed to be waiting for the right moment to share. Lionel, for his part, had intensified his presence in her life. Now they dined together almost every night. He took her to more social events, and although he maintained his usual coldness, he occasionally let slip small gestures that could pass for consideration. A comment about how blue suited her eyes, a question about her day, a book left on her bed that she had mentioned wanting to read. One Sunday morning, while Lionel was closeted in his office with advisors, Alana took the opportunity to visit Lucas at the clinic in Belgravia. The sprawling medical complex, with its white walls and well-maintained gardens, was one of the best in the country for treating rare autoimmune diseases. "You look different," Lucas observed, when they were alone in the private room. At 19, his thin, pale body contrasted with the liveliness of his brown eyes, so much like their mother's. "There's something in your gaze." "Worry?" Alana forced a smile, adjusting the pillows behind him. "Just tiredness. The Blackwoods' social life is exhausting." "And what's it like being married to the Almighty?" Lucas asked with the typical frankness of youth. "It's complicated," she replied, choosing her words carefully. She would never tell her brother the true nature of that marriage, much less how used she felt on the nights Lionel called her to his room. "He's reserved, focused on work. We barely see each other." Lucas watched her intently. "You're not happy. You shouldn't have done this for me, Lana. Sacrificing your life." "I didn't sacrifice anything," she interrupted, holding his hand. "I made a choice. And seeing you getting better every day, I know it was worth it." And it was true. The new treatments were working. Lucas had gained weight. Tests showed improvement in inflammatory markers, and for the first time in years, there was real hope of remission. "Besides," she continued, trying to sound cheerful, "I'm getting to know a new world, interesting people, places I never imagined I'd frequent. Like the magazine I saw last week, you and Lionel at his foundation's gala. You in that incredible red dress. It looked like a movie scene." Alana remembered that night. The Valentino dress Lionel had personally chosen, the jewels borrowed from a famous designer, the envious glances of women and covetous glances of men, and how for a brief moment she had felt powerful beside him. When they entered together and the chatter subsided, all eyes on the couple. "It's just appearance. Lou, a role I'm playing." "Be careful not to get lost in the character," her brother warned with wisdom beyond his years. "Remember what Mom always said. If you pretend for too long, one day you wake up and don't know who you are anymore." Lucas's words accompanied her back to the Blackwood mansion. Was she getting lost in that world of luxury and appearances? She had already noticed small changes in herself, a more erect posture, care in choosing words, even the way she now appreciated expensive wines and recognized paintings by European masters. "Did you have a good day with your brother?" Lionel's question caught her by surprise when she entered the library. He was sitting in a leather armchair, a book open on his lap and a glass of whiskey in his hand. She hadn't known he had returned. "How did you know where I was?" A cold smile curved his lips. "I know everything that happens with my wife, including when she enters forbidden areas of the house in the middle of the night." Alana's heart quickened. So he knew about her foray into the restricted wing, about meeting Kyle, about Helen's photo. "Why did you marry me?" she asked directly, tired of games and half-truths. "And don't give me that story about business image. There's something more." Lionel set the book aside and indicated the armchair opposite him. "Sit." She obeyed, keeping her eyes fixed on him, determined not to back down. "You look like her," he finally said, his voice lower, almost vulnerable. "Like Helen? Who was she?" "Your ex-wife. My only wife. Before you." The revelation surprised her. At no point during the marriage process had there been any mention of Lionel's previous marriage. What happened to her? Lionel's gaze drifted for an instant, as if seeing something beyond the library walls. "She died. 7 years ago." "How?" "An accident. At home." He stood up abruptly, going to the window. "I don't like to talk about it." But Alana couldn't stop now. "And if you married me because of the physical resemblance, is that it? Some kind of substitute?" When Lionel turned around, there was something different in his gaze, a mixture of anger and pain she had never seen before. "Don't be ridiculous. I married you because I needed a wife, and you needed money for your brother. A simple agreement without emotional complications. Then why keep me away from that wing of the house? What's there that you don't want me to see? In 3 quick steps he was before her, holding her by the shoulders with enough force to leave marks. Don't question what you cannot comprehend. Alana, there are things in this house, in this family, that it's better you don't know. The proximity, the intensity in his eyes, the pressure of his fingers on her skin, all this provoked a confused reaction in Alana, a mixture of fear and excitement that disconcerted her. "You're hurting me," she murmured, but without trying to pull away. He loosened his grip but didn't release her. His eyes swept over her face as if searching for something. "Sometimes I wonder if I made the right choice with you. If it wouldn't have been better to choose someone less stubborn. Too late for regrets, isn't it? The contract is signed." An enigmatic smile appeared on his face. Contracts can be broken, provided one is willing to pay the price. Before she could answer, he pulled her to him and kissed her with an intensity different from all previous times. It wasn't a mechanical kiss now, but urgent, almost desperate, as if seeking something in her that kept escaping. When he released her, both were breathless. "Go to your room," he ordered, his voice hoarse. "I have work to do." Confused by the emotional roller coaster she had just experienced, Alana withdrew. As she climbed the stairs, she was sure of one thing. Helen was much more than a deceased ex-wife. She was a shadow that still inhabited that house, that still lived in Lionel's mind. And in some inexplicable way, she connected to her, Alana, in a way she couldn't yet comprehend. The next morning, Alana woke up with a decision made. She needed to know more about Helen and about her own past. If there was a connection between them, she needed to find out what it was. The opportunity arose when Lionel announced during breakfast that he would be out all day at meetings in Manchester. "Rita has the day off today, and Kyle is at your disposal if you need to go out," he informed, checking emails on his phone while drinking coffee. "I'll be dining out too. Don't wait for me." As soon as Lionel's black Jaguar disappeared through the gates, Alana looked for Kyle. She found him in the garage, polishing one of Lionel's car collection. "We need to talk," she said bluntly. "About Helen." Kyle looked up from the vintage Porsche he was cleaning, his face serious. "Not here. The walls really do have ears in this house." He suggested a drive, and soon they were in the less conspicuous Mercedes from the collection, driving along the embankment towards Hyde Park. The day was sunny, typical London autumn, with a blue sky and mild temperature. In the park, they walked to an isolated bench away from other visitors. "I knew Helen," Kyle began, looking at the horizon. "I worked as family security when she married Lionel. She was different from you, more fragile, more submissive, but physically. It's frightening how much you look alike. What happened to her?" Lionel said it was a domestic accident. A dry laugh escaped Kyle's lips. "That's the official version, of course. Helen fell down the main staircase of the mansion, broke her neck. Instant death. Convenient, no? Are you suggesting it wasn't an accident?" Kyle looked her directly in the eyes. "I'm saying nothing in the Blackwood family is as it seems. Helen was unhappy, wanted a divorce. There were rumors of a lover. And then suddenly a fatal accident." "My God," Alana murmured, feeling a chill. "Do you think Lionel—" "I don't know what happened that night. I only know that I was removed from security shortly after, demoted to driver, and everyone who asked questions ended up fired or transferred." "Why are you telling me this now? Why risk yourself?" Kyle's eyes darkened. "Because you deserve to know what you're stepping into. And because," he hesitated, "because ever since I first saw you, I felt there was something different about you. Strength. The same strength Helen didn't have." There was more in those words than Kyle admitted, an intensity in his gaze that made Alana avert her eyes, confused by the whirlwind of emotions. "There's one more thing you should know," he continued. Helen's maiden name was Carter. Alana felt as if the ground had vanished beneath her feet. "Carter is my mother's maiden name." "Exactly. And your father disappeared 10 years ago, didn't he? Shortly after Helen's death." The pieces began to fit together in a disturbing way. "My father. He worked as an accountant. I never knew exactly for whom. He was the Blackwoods' personal accountant, and, according to rumors, Helen's lover." The revelation hit her like a punch. Her father, the quiet, gentle man who told her stories before bed, involved with a Blackwood's wife, and then disappeared without a trace. Does Lionel know this? Does he know who I am? I believe so. I don't think it's a coincidence that he chose you specifically to marry. My God, Alana repeated, covering her face with her hands. Is this some kind of sick revenge? Marrying the daughter of the man he believes betrayed his wife. Kyle placed a hand on her shoulder, a gentle touch that contrasted with the harshness of the revelations. Or perhaps it's more complex than that. Lionel is a troubled man, obsessive. Perhaps he sees in you a second chance to possess what he lost. His touch lingered longer than necessary. When their eyes met, there was something new there. A connection, a mutual understanding that went beyond words. I need to find out the truth, Alana decided, composing herself. About Helen, about my father, about Lionel. Can you help me? It's dangerous, Alana. The Blackwoods have influence everywhere. Police, judiciary, press, and I have no choice. If I'm in this game, I need to know the rules. And who my enemies are. Kyle hesitated, then nodded. There are records, documents at the Blackwood Foundation. I can try to get access. Thank you, she said, impulsively taking his hand. The contact sent an electric current through her body, a sensation completely different from what she experienced with Lionel. On the way back, Alana watched the city through the car window, her mind processing the revelations. If Kyle was right, she was at the center of a plot much more complex than she had imagined. It wasn't just a marriage of convenience, but part of a larger plan, perhaps of revenge, perhaps of sick obsession. Upon arriving at the mansion, they found an unknown vehicle parked at the entrance, a black Range Rover with tinted windows. That's Theodore Blackwood's car, Kyle informed her, his face tense. Lionel's uncle. I didn't know he was expecting visitors today. Theodore rarely announces when he's coming. He's the family patriarch now, since Lionel's father died. Be careful with him. He's more dangerous than his nephew. Kyle had barely finished speaking when the front door opened and two men emerged. Lionel, who was supposedly in Manchester all day, and an older gentleman, tall and elegant with greying hair and a military bearing. When they saw the car approaching, they abruptly stopped their conversation. Where have you been? Lionel asked as soon as Alana got out of the vehicle, ignoring any greeting. To the park. I needed some fresh air, she replied, maintaining her composure despite her racing heart. Lionel's eyes alternated between her and Kyle, who remained by the car, his expression neutral. I thought I said I'd be in Manchester today. There was a change of plans, he replied dryly, before turning to the older man. Theodore, this is Alana, my wife. The Blackwood patriarch's eyes studied her like a scientist examining a specimen under a microscope. There was something predatory in that gaze that made Alana shiver internally. We finally meet, Theodore said, his deep voice matching his imposing presence. Lionel has kept you very well guarded, my dear. He extended his hand for a formal greeting, which Alana accepted. His hand was cold, his grip too firm to be comfortable. It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Blackwood. Theodore, please. We are family now. His smile didn't reach his eyes, which continued to analyze her. I must say Lionel didn't exaggerate about your appearance. The comment, laden with hidden meanings, made the air between them even heavier. Alana was instantly sure. Theodore knew about Helen, about the resemblance, about everything. My wife must be tired, Lionel intervened, placing a possessive hand on Alana's back. We'll continue our conversation another time, Uncle. Certainly. Theodore took a step towards the Range Rover, then stopped. I'll be dining in the city next Friday. I hope you and your charming wife can join me. We'll be there, Lionel replied, his tone leaving no room for discussion. When Theodore left, the silence between them was almost palpable. Lionel glared at Kyle, who was still waiting by the car. You're dismissed for the rest of the day. After Kyle walked away, Lionel turned his attention to Alana. Come in now. In the office, he slammed the door shut, facing her with a contained fury that was more frightening than any outburst of rage. What were you doing with him? I told you I went to the park. I needed to get out of this house to breathe. Don't play innocent. I saw how he looked at you, how you responded. Alana raised her chin, defiant. Are you jealous, Lionel? That wasn't part of our agreement. He approached, invading her personal space. Our agreement included discretion and respect for my position. Being seen around the city with my employee alone is not acceptable. I didn't do anything wrong. You yourself said Kyle would be at my disposal. To transport you, not to spend the day in your company? His eyes searched hers, looking for something. What did you talk about? Alana's heart raced, but she kept her expression neutral. Nothing important. He showed me some places in the city I didn't know. Lionel studied her for a long moment, then his face softened slightly. Alana, I need you to understand your position in this family. You are not just my wife on paper. You are my partner in the eyes of the world. Your actions reflect on me, on the Blackwood name. I thought it was just a business arrangement, she retorted. You get your trophy wife, I get treatment for my brother. Things are not always so simple. He ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of nervousness. There's more at stake than you imagine. Then explain it to me. Tell me about Helen, about my father, about why you really married me. The mention of Helen's name made Lionel harden again. Who spoke about your father? It doesn't matter. What matters is the truth. I'm tired of living among half-words and secrets. For an instant, it seemed he would give in, that he would finally open some door to the truth. But then his phone rang. Upon checking the number, his face changed. I need to take this, he said, turning away. The conversation was short and in a low voice, but Alana noticed the growing tension in his posture. When he hung up, Lionel seemed paler. We have to postpone this conversation. A business problem has arisen. There's always a convenient problem when we get close to the truth, isn't there? He ignored her, heading to the door. Don't leave the property today, and stay away from Kyle. That's an order, not a request. After he left, Alana remained in the office, adrenaline still coursing through her veins. Her gaze wandered around the room, stopping at Lionel's desk. The computer was on, the lock screen glowing. A daring idea came to her mind. It wouldn't be easy. Lionel was careful, meticulous with his passwords and files. But if there was a chance, however small, to discover the truth about her past, about her father, about Helen, she had to take the risk. She approached the computer, observing the login screen. She needed a password. She thought about what she knew about Lionel, about important dates, names significant to him. She tried some obvious combinations. Nothing. Then, in a flash of intuition, she typed Helen 1902, February 1st, the date she had seen on her picture frame. The screen unlocked. With her heart pounding against her chest, Alana began to navigate through the files. Most were business-related. Financial spreadsheets, contracts, reports. But there was a protected folder simply titled H. She needed another password. She tried several combinations until, on an impulse, she typed Carter, Helen's maiden name. The folder opened, revealing dozens of meticulously organized subfolders. One of them caught her attention: Investigation. Inside, she found detailed reports from a private detective agency hired by Lionel after Helen's death. The files contained photos, testimonies, phone records, a whole investigation into Helen's alleged extramarital affair. And there was her father, Anthony Morrison, in several photos with Helen, some innocent, at company events, others more compromising, showing discreet meetings in cafes, hotel entrances. A report concluded substantial evidence of romantic involvement between Helen Blackwood and Anthony Morrison in the 6 months prior to Mrs. Blackwood's death. Alana felt her stomach churn. The dates perfectly coincided with her last memories of her father before his disappearance. She continued to explore the files, finding a folder marked Am After. She opened it with trembling hands. The first document was a confidentiality agreement, signed by her father, where he committed never to contact any member of the Blackwood family again, and to leave London permanently in exchange for a considerable sum. The following documents were periodic monitoring reports of Anthony Morrison in a small town in rural Cornwall, where he apparently lived under a new name. Her father was alive. All this time, alive, hidden, paid to disappear. She was so absorbed in the discovery that she didn't hear the door open. She only realized she was no longer alone when Lionel's voice cut through the silence. Did you find what you were looking for? Alana turned, her face pale, to find Lionel standing at the entrance, his expression indecipherable. My father is alive, she said, her voice trembling with emotion. You forced him to disappear, to abandon his children. He had a choice, Lionel replied, closing the door behind him. Money and a new life, or face accounting fraud charges that would send him to prison for decades. Charges I could easily prove. False accusations, I bet. Irrelevant now. He approached, his eyes fixed on the open files on the screen. "You shouldn't have seen this. Why did you marry me?" she asked, facing him directly. "Was it because of my father? Some kind of sick revenge?" Lionel's gaze softened unexpectedly, something vulnerable appearing for an instant. "At first, perhaps. When I found out who you were, his daughter, so much like Helen, it seemed like a perfect opportunity to close a circle. And what changed?" He averted his gaze, a rare gesture of uncertainty. "You are not her, nor are you your father. You have your own strength." The confession caught her off guard. There was sincerity in those words, an admission that seemed to cost Lionel more than he would like. "And now?" she asked, suddenly aware of the proximity between them, of the tension that had always existed, but which now seemed laden with new meanings. "Now we have a problem," he replied, returning to a pragmatic tone. "You know too much about Helen, about your father, about me. Are you going to make me disappear too?" The defiance in her voice masked the real fear she felt. To her surprise, Lionel took a step forward and touched her face, an almost gentle touch. "Not everything is what it seems in this story. Alana, there are more truths buried in this house than you imagine." Before she could answer, he leaned in and kissed her, not with the mechanical possession of before, but with a different, almost desperate intensity. And, to her own surprise, Alana responded, as if her body recognized something her mind was still struggling to comprehend. When they pulled apart, both breathless, Lionel looked deeply into her eyes. "There's something I need to show you. Something that will change everything you think you know about me, about Helen, about this family." Lionel led her down the corridor to the restricted wing of the mansion, the one that had always been forbidden to Alana. The silence between them was heavy, laden with recent revelations and still hidden truths. He unlocked a door at the end of the corridor. Not the one Alana had found before, but another, almost camouflaged in the wall. "Few people know about this place," he said, his voice echoing in the enclosed space as he turned on the lights. "Not even Rita or the other staff have access." The room that was revealed left Alana speechless. It was an office laboratory, with walls covered in notes, photos, documents connected by red threads, like in investigation films. A large central table was filled with chronologically organized folders, vials with different substances, and sophisticated medical equipment. "What is all this?" she asked, her gaze sweeping the walls where she recognized photos of Helen, of Theodore Blackwood, and even some of herself, taken long before the wedding, leaving her old apartment at the hospital with Lucas, in everyday situations she never imagined were being monitored. "My private investigation," Lionel replied, locking the door behind them. "I started after Helen's death when things didn't make sense, when I began to notice disturbing patterns." He approached one of the walls, pointing to a specific set of documents. "Helen didn't die by accident, nor was she murdered in a crime of passion, as I suspected for a long time after discovering her affair with your father." Alana felt a shiver run down her spine. "What do you mean?" "Helen was slowly poisoned over months. The supposed accident on the stairs was just the final blow, when she was already too weak to defend herself." "My God," Alana murmured, her voice almost gone. "Who would do that?" Lionel's eyes darkened. "The same person who has been poisoning me for the past few years." The revelation hit her like a punch. The trembling hands she had noticed, the discreetly taken pills, the occasional pallor, everything began to make sense. "You're sick." "I'm dying," he corrected with clinical coldness, "slowly with the same symptoms my mother exhibited before her sudden death 15 years ago. The same symptoms Helen began to develop months before her fall." Alana approached the central table, observing the medical reports scattered, toxicological analyses, exam results, consultations with international specialists. "Heavy metal," Lionel continued, pointing to one of the reports. "Low dose, constant, practically undetectable in conventional tests. Causes progressive neurological deterioration, tremors, occasional cognitive failures until it leads to complete collapse." "Who is doing this to you?" Alana asked, although she already suspected the answer. "My uncle Theodore," Lionel replied, confirming her suspicions. "The eternal number 2 of the Blackwood family, always in my father's shadow, then in my shadow. The man who would control everything if I weren't in the way. He opened a drawer and pulled out a carefully organized dossier. I've been collecting evidence for years. Analyses of meals prepared exclusively for me, behavioral patterns, suspicious financial transfers to toxicology specialists. Everything points to him. Why didn't you report him? With all your power, your contacts. A bitter smile crossed Lionel's face. The Blackwood Empire is like a house of cards, Alana. A public accusation against Theodore, evidence of murders within the family. Everything would collapse. Stocks plummeting, contracts cancelled, investigations into other shady dealings. I would lose everything I've built, everything I've protected all these years. So you preferred to die slowly? I preferred to buy time. He looked at her intensely. Until I found you. The pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place in Alana's mind. I'm part of your plan against Theodore. At first, yes, Lionel admitted. When I discovered who you were, Anthony Morrison's daughter with that incredible resemblance to Helen. It seemed perfect. A new young wife. A new chance to produce an heir who would challenge Theodore's claims to family control, even after my death. A child, Alana murmured, finally understanding. The Knights Lionel called her. The methodical sex, it wasn't just possession. It was a desperate attempt to secure a lineage, to protect his legacy. But then something changed, he continued, approaching. You weren't what I expected. You weren't docile like Helen. You didn't bend easily. Your strength. It intrigued me. It challenged me. There was a rare vulnerability in his voice now, something Alana had never imagined hearing from Lionel Blackwood. And then I realized I was repeating the same mistakes of the past. Using you as a piece in the game, just as Theodore used Helen, just as my father used my mother. The Blackwood family's sick cycle. And Kyle? Alana asked, remembering the driver, the tension between him and Lionel. How does he fit into all this? Lionel's face hardened again. Kyle was Helen's personal security guard. He was off duty on the night of the accident. I always suspected his involvement, but I never got concrete proof. That's why I kept him close. To observe him, to understand his role. Does he know about the poisoning? I'm not sure how much he knows, but he's playing some parallel game, I have no doubt about that. Alana tried to process all these revelations, feeling herself at the center of a complex web of lies, revenge, and power. Why are you showing me all this now? Lionel observed her for a long moment, as if weighing his answer. Because time is running out. The symptoms are worsening. And because, against all odds, he hesitated, words he was clearly unaccustomed to uttering. I care about you, in a way I didn't plan, in a way I haven't experienced in a very long time. The confession hung between them, transforming the atmosphere of the room. It wasn't a declaration of romantic love, but something equally powerful, a recognition of humanity in a man who had spent years burying his feelings under layers of calculated coldness. What do you plan to do now? She asked, still processing the new dynamic between them. Confront Theodore, Lionel replied with determination. A dinner next Friday. I have almost all the proof I need, but one crucial piece is missing. Which one? The source of the poison. Theodore doesn't personally administer the doses. That would be too risky. Someone in the mansion is his accomplice. Someone with access to my food, to my medication. Rita? Alana suggested, remembering the housekeeper's devotion to the Blackwood family. Possibly. Or the chef, or his gaze. Intensified, Kyle. The mention of the name provoked an involuntary reaction in Alana, an almost imperceptible twitch that did not escape. Lionel's keen eyes. You care about him, he observed. Not as an accusation, but as a statement of fact. I don't know what I feel, Alana admitted honestly. Everything is confused now. Discovering about my father, about Helen, about you. It's as if I no longer know who the villains are and who the victims are in this story. Lionel approached, touching her face with unusual gentleness. In the Blackwood family, Alana, we are all a little bit of each. Villains by our choices, victims of our legacy. His touch, once distant and possessive, now conveyed something different. A connection born of confrontation with his own mortality, of shared vulnerability. I need your help, he continued, to find out who Theodore's accomplice is, to gather the final evidence before Friday's dinner. I know you have no reason to help me after everything, but I'll help, Alana interrupted. surprising herself with the speed of her decision. Not for you, not just for the money for Lucas's treatment, but because I need to know the whole truth about my father, about Helen, about myself. A faint smile appeared on Lionel's face. I knew you'd say that. It's what differentiates you from her, you know? Helen would run. You face it. They returned to the main floor in silence, each absorbed in their own thoughts. The plan was simple but risky. Alana would closely observe the staff, especially Kyle, looking for suspicious behavior, trying to gain their trust to obtain information. The next 3 days were a constant performance. During the day, Alana circulated through the mansion, casually talking to the staff, paying special attention to the preparation of Lionel's meals, to the medicines he took. At night, she discussed her discoveries with him in the master bedroom, which they now regularly shared, not just to maintain appearances, but because something had changed between them, an intimacy born of shared danger. It was on Thursday, the eve of the planned confrontation with Theodore, that Alana finally found what they were looking for. She was in the back garden when she saw Kyle discreetly leaving the kitchen, looking around as if checking if he was being watched. She followed him at a distance to the old storeroom at the edge of the property. Hidden behind bushes, she watched him unlock the small building and enter. Minutes later, he came out carrying a small package and returned to the mansion. When she was sure he had gone inside, Alana approached the storeroom. The lock was simple, easy to open with a hairpin, a skill she had learned in her teens, when she sometimes got locked out of the apartment. The interior was dark and dusty, filled with gardening tools and old equipment. In a corner, partially hidden by tarpaulins, she found a small metal box. Inside, carefully labeled vials with dates containing a whitish powder. She took photos with her phone and closed everything exactly as she had found it. Her heart pounded. She had found the missing proof, but also confirmation that Kyle was involved. The man who had helped her, who had shown her kindness, who had awakened confusing feelings, was an accomplice in Lionel's poisoning. Or perhaps there was another explanation. She needed to confront him before drawing conclusions. The opportunity arose that same night. Lionel had left for a last-minute meeting, preparing for the next day's confrontation. Alana found Kyle in the garage, polishing the car they would use for dinner with Theodore. "We need to talk," she said, closing the door behind her. Kyle looked up, his face impassive. "About what?" "About what I found in the storeroom today. About the vials." She saw recognition in his eyes, followed by a cautious expression. "It's not what you're thinking." "Then explain it to me. Because it looks like you're poisoning Lionel, just like they did to Helen." Kyle dropped the polishing cloth and approached. "I'm not poisoning anyone. I'm collecting samples." "Samples of what?" "Of the poison Theodore is using. I've been monitoring it for months, ever since I noticed the pattern, the same symptoms Helen exhibited before she died." Alana stared at him, trying to discern the truth in his eyes. "Why? Why would you care?" A shadow of pain crossed Kyle's face. "Because I loved Helen. Not as you imagine, she was my half-sister." The revelation caught her off guard. "What do you mean?" "My father had an affair with her mother years earlier. Helen discovered it as an adult. We secretly grew close. That's how I got the security job here, to be near her, to protect her." "Did Lionel know about this?" "No, no one knew. It was our secret. When she started to get sick, I suspected Theodore, but I couldn't prove it in time." His voice trailed off. "After she died, I swore I'd find out the truth. That's when I started suspecting poisoning." "And my father?" Alana asked, the pieces fitting together differently now. "His affair with Helen. It was a charade we created together. Your father was the family accountant. He found irregularities in Theodore's accounts, suspicious transactions with obscure pharmaceutical labs. Helen convinced him to help her investigate. We faked an affair to justify their meetings." Alana felt her legs weaken, leaning against the side of the car. "So my father didn't betray anyone." "He was trying to do the right thing," Kyle confirmed. "When Helen died, Theodore found out about the investigation. He threatened your father, forced him to disappear. Lionel, blinded by jealousy and grief, facilitated everything by believing the affair story." "Why didn't you ever tell Lionel?" "I tried at first, but he was consumed by grief, by rage. Later, when I started noticing the symptoms in him, I decided to investigate on my own. Collecting evidence, Samples of the poison for analysis. Who is administering the poison? Kyle's gaze darkened. Rita, the loyal Blackwood family housekeeper. In fact, Theodore's distant cousin, with whom he's had a secret relationship for years. She's the one adding the poison to his medicines, his food. Alana took a deep breath, trying to process all these new revelations that completely redrew the map of allies and enemies. Lionel plans to confront Theodore tomorrow, at dinner, she revealed. He has proof, but the source of the poison was missing. It's a trap, Kyle warned, his face tense. Theodore won't be cornered so easily. If Lionel confronts him without adequate protection, we need to warn him, Alana decided, pulling out her phone. But it was too late. When she tried to call, the call went straight to voicemail. She repeated several times with the same result. Something's wrong, she murmured, a dark premonition growing in her chest. Lionel always answers my calls. Where did he say he'd be? Meeting at the company headquarters, then going straight home. Kyle checked his watch. He should have been back by now. I'll check with company security. He grabbed his own phone, made a quick call, his face growing tenser with each second. He left 2 hours ago. The car tracker shows he stopped at Theodore's house in Belgravia. My God, Alana murmured, fear rising. Do you think he decided to confront him today? Or he was lured into a trap? Kyle grabbed a set of car keys. Let's go now. The drive to Belgravia was tense and silent. Theodore's mansion, even more imposing than Lionel's, was partially lit when they arrived. Lionel's car was parked in the circular driveway. How are we going to get in? Alana asked when they stopped a safe distance away. I know this house, Kyle replied. I was part of the security team that installed the system. There's an entrance through the back, through the conservatory, but it's risky. Theodore has armed guards. We have no choice, she decided. Lionel could be in danger. They managed to enter unnoticed, moving silently through the luxurious house. Muffled voices guided them to a semi-open door leading to the main office. Alana felt her blood run cold as she saw the scene through the crack. Lionel sitting in an armchair, seemingly unable to get up, his face contorted in pain. Theodore standing in front of him, a glass of whiskey in his hand, speaking casually. Sad it came to this, nephew. You could have accepted your fate gradually with dignity. But you insisted on investigating, on resisting. You killed Helen. Lionel's voice came out with difficulty. And my mother. Before her. Theodore shrugged, indifferent. Necessary. Your mother found out about my adjustments to the company accounts, and Helen was becoming inconvenient, asking too many questions. That fall down the stairs was a masterstroke, don't you think? Everyone believed it was an accident. It won't work this time, Lionel said, trying to straighten up in the armchair. I have proof and documents, which will be found with your body after your tragic suicide, Theodore finished coldly. The pressure of business, the untreated depression after Helen's death. Everyone will believe it, especially when the autopsy reveals the same compounds in your blood that were found in your private office. Your obsession with investigating Helen's death led you to experiment with the same substances, you see. Alana looked at Kyle, panic rising. He signaled for them to wait for the right moment. Theodore continued, pouring himself more whiskey. And your new wife, that girl from the East End you brought into the family. How convenient that she looks so much like Helen. It further reinforces the narrative of your emotional imbalance. Theodore moved closer to Lionel, who was futilely trying to get up. The dose I administered today is significantly higher than usual. In a few hours your heart will simply stop. The autopsy will reveal toxins, but it will appear you ingested them voluntarily. End of the direct Blackwood lineage. I will finally assume my rightful place. They could no longer wait. Kyle gestured, and both burst into the office. Theodore turned, surprised, dropping his glass. What is this? He roared, backing away a few steps. It's over, Theodore, Kyle said, approaching cautiously. We know everything. About Helen, about the poisoning, about Rita. Alana ran to Lionel, who could barely keep his eyes open. He needs a hospital now. Theodore laughed, a cold, controlled laugh. Do you really think you can do anything? In this house, with my security guards a shout away. Kyle pulled a small device from his pocket. This bug recorded your entire confession. It's already being transmitted to 3 different secure emails. One of them to the federal police. Theodore's face lost color. You're bluffing. The documents Lionel gathered, The samples of the poison I collected from the storeroom, Rita's testimony we obtained this afternoon. Everything is already with the authorities, Kyle lied with impressive conviction. For a second, fear flashed in Theodore's eyes, but it was soon replaced by cold determination. In a quick movement, he opened a desk drawer and pulled out a gun. "No one will destroy what I've built," he said, pointing at Kyle. "You've always been an inconvenience, ever since Helen's time." What happened next was too fast. Theodore shot. Kyle dove to the side. The deafening sound of the gunshot reverberated through the room. There were shouts, confusion, more shots. A security guard rushed in, saw the chaotic scene, and by instinct drew his own weapon. Alana only remembered throwing herself over Lionel, protecting him with her body. She felt a warm impact on her shoulder, then pain, then nothing. The world went dark. When she woke up, she was in a hospital room. The white, sterile light, the constant beeping of monitors. She tried to move, but a sharp pain in her shoulder stopped her. "Slowly," a familiar voice said. She turned her head and saw Kyle, his arm bandaged, sitting in a chair beside the bed. "What happened?" she asked, her voice hoarse. "Lionel." "He's alive," he replied. "In the room next door, still under observation. They're doing detoxification treatment. The doctors say he'll recover, though the treatment will be long." "And Theodore?" A shadow passed over Kyle's face. "Dead. In the shootout. One of the security guards shot him when he realized what was happening." Alana closed her eyes for a moment, absorbing everything. "You lied to Theodore, didn't you? About the authorities already being involved?" A small smile appeared on Kyle's face. "Yes, but after everything happened, the police really were called. The evidence Lionel gathered, combined with Rita's testimony, who eventually confessed to reduce her sentence. Everything came to light, and my father. Lionel has already contacted him," Kyle revealed. "He's returning to London in the next few days. Apparently, when he heard you were in the hospital, he didn't hesitate for a second." Tears welled up in Alana's eyes, tears of relief, of renewed hope, of closure to a painful cycle. "And us?" she asked softly. "What happens now?" Kyle gently held her hand. "That depends on you, on your choices." 5 days later, Alana was discharged. At the hospital door, 2 men waited for her. Lionel, still pale and thinner but with a different, lighter look, and Kyle, whose injured arm no longer needed a sling. She looked at both, feeling the weight of the choice before her. Lionel, with whom she had shared danger and discovery, with whom she had developed an unexpected connection, born of mutual vulnerability. Kyle, who had been by her side from the beginning, who had risked everything to help her discover the truth. "Where do you want to go?" Lionel asked, breaking the silence. Alana took a deep breath, feeling the big city air fill her lungs. London stretched before her, grey and vibrant, full of possibilities. "Home," she replied simply. "Which one?" he insisted. She smiled, a calm smile of someone who finally understood her own power. "Mine. The apartment where I grew up with Lucas. I need time. For myself." She saw the understanding in both their eyes. She wasn't rejecting either of them, just choosing herself first. "I'll stop by the hospital to see Lucas first," she continued. "Then I want to be there when my father arrives." Lionel nodded, respecting her decision. "Our original agreement stands. Your brother's treatment, financial support, regardless of what you decide about us." "Thank you," she said sincerely. "For everything, including the truth." When the taxi arrived, Alana got in without looking back. She knew both would be there when she was ready to decide. Or perhaps she would choose neither, to follow her own path, free from the ghosts of the past, mistress of her own destiny. In the Blackwood mansion, the mirrors no longer reflected only part of the truth. The windows not only spied but let the light in, and in the room once locked, Helen's memories could finally rest. As for Alana, the woman who had entered that house as a piece of a game larger than herself, now rewrote the rules. No longer a substitute, no longer a tool of revenge or redemption, just herself, complex, imperfect, free. The car moved through the city as she looked out the window, the future as vast as London's horizon. The night she married had no celebration, only silence and a contract. But the day she regained her freedom,